Louisiana is on the verge of becoming the first state in the nation to criminalize the possession of abortion pills if you don't have a prescription. The new bill, which was passed today by the legislature and which is expected to be signed into law by the state's Republican governor, Jeff Landry, classifies mifepristone and misoprostol as Schedule IV drugs. That designates them as dangerous controlled substances, on the level with how the FDA classifies narcotics and depressants like Xanax, Valium, and Ambien. Anyone who is found in possession of these drugs without a prescription could face a felony charge and up to 10 years in prison as a result of this new legislation. Of course, abortion is already banned in the state of Louisiana, with no exceptions, I should note, for rape or incest. Medical professionals are warning that on top of that, this bill could spark confusion and even potentially delays in providing timely emergency care. That's something that my source tonight, Caitlin Joshua, has personally experienced in that state when she had a miscarriage. I should note she's now working with the Biden campaign, and Caitlin joins me tonight. And Caitlin, first, I just want to say thank you for coming on to talk about something that is so personal and also so painful, and being willing to talk about it publicly. Because for those who aren't familiar with your story, when you became pregnant, you were told to wait weeks for your first prenatal appointment because of that abortion law that I just mentioned there. Can you just walk us through what happened to you?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you again for having me on this evening. My husband and I found out that we were expecting the summer of 2022. We were extremely thrilled. I moved to call my provider and schedule my first prenatal appointment, but was denied that prenatal appointment as a result of at the time was the recent Dobbs decision. And the provider's office basically told me that they were not seeing patients until that 12-week mark, just to try to mitigate a bit of the medical liability that comes with seeing patients before that 12 weeks. Unfortunately, my husband and I did not make it till 12 weeks. I miscarried right around 11. And unfortunately went to several different medical providers in my city to be able to get care. I knew that I was miscarrying at the time, but unfortunately, no one would tell me that, right? No one would write it on paper or explain what was happening with my body. And ultimately, the first hospital that I went to sent me home with prayers. The second hospital that I went to denied any type of procedure or at the time medication abortion to be able to pass my pregnancy with dignity. And I was left to pass it at home by myself. And it took weeks on end to be able to do that. And I am just advocating for women across this country so that they do not have to face the same implications that come into play as a result of an abortion ban.
I mean, to hear you say that it took weeks, and just to think of how painful and challenging that period must have been, I think it's hard for a lot of people to even fathom having to go through that.
Yes, and unfortunately, it is a reality that we are seeing play out all across this country right now.
And so when you look back on your experience and what happened, and then you see what happened today with the legislation that passed designating these abortion pills as dangerous controlled substances, I mean, this is something that the FDA has studied and says is overwhelmingly safe and not dependent, doesn't have a dependency potential like the other drugs that I was just talking about. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
I am absolutely infuriated. I think that we are seeing firsthand the policies in which Donald Trump first was able to overturn Roe versus Wade, the Dobbs decision coming down, and ultimately states across this country seeing an abortion ban played out right in real time, right? And essentially we know that if we allow Donald Trump to get back into that White House, we're going to look at what's happening in Louisiana is going to be happening all across this country, and it is infuriating. I certainly believe that in a state that has such terrible maternal morbidity rates, has terrible fetal morbidity rates, we are going backwards and essentially not allowing women to have access to the healthcare that they need in dire situations. This is medication, both mifepristone and misoprostol is already, as you alluded to, prescribed all the time, thousands of times a day to manage miscarriage treatments, similar to my story, and handle postpartum hemorrhaging and a host of other reasons, right? A host of other issues that women face during, whenever they're going to the doctor, routine biopsies, you name it. The list is very long. And to see that my state passed a bill that set precedents not just for the South, but for this country, and essentially is taking a step back and putting women's lives at risk, just to check a box. And for what reason, we are unsure. But what we do know, it is so important that women and men in this moment understand that this too could be your state. And we've got to do whatever we can to make sure that we get President Biden Biden and Vice President Harris back in the White House to
Yeah.
restore Roe and do away with these draconian laws that we are seeing across this country.
Well, Caitlin, you live in Louisiana. This is something that you've had to deal with. My home state of Alabama, right next door, abortion is also totally banned there. And we were just talking here on the show last night about what happened with IVF clinics after a decision by the Supreme Court there and their ruling. I think a lot of people may not understand, what is it like to be a woman in the South right now?
It is frightening, and it's a feeling that I don't want other women to feel. And I want folks to understand right now, I think there's this idea, Caitlin, that if you live in a safe state, quote unquote, that you don't need to worry about a federal abortion ban. But essentially, we know a federal abortion ban would allow for the same things that we're experiencing in Louisiana, the same things we're experiencing in Alabama to be happening all over this country. And they're not, when I say they, MAGA Republicans are not going to stop at just IVF or contraception or what we're seeing right now playing out as scheduling drugs that are misappropriately scheduled and potentially putting so many women's lives at risk. And we know we will see women perish as a result of this law being enacted in Louisiana today. And it is just so frightening and frustrating and all the things. But one overarching message that I am hoping to convey is that folks plug in and understand that we've got to do what we need to do this fall to make sure that we elect President Biden and Vice President Harris to make sure that we restore Roe versus Wade.
And I know that in addition to your 5-year-old daughter, you and your husband recently welcomed your 6-month-old son as well, Caitlin. So congrats on that. And thank you for joining us here tonight on The Source.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you.